Hello.
Hello? You scared me slightly. Hold on a second. Let me just put the stream up. You can hear me for just fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. URL. Damn it. It's so confusing to stream on YouTube, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I did
Why are
start.
you doing?
Sorry?
Why are you doing YouTube and not Twitch?
The thing I was using to stream to Twitch, it broke. Like, they stopped
Oh,
supporting it. So I'd have to, like, set up brand new software.
got it.
Also, I always like YouTube because you can rewind the stream on YouTube. You can't do it on Twitch. So it's a personal preference as well.
Oh, like while it's streaming, you can't rewind it.
Yes. This will be very awkward if it's if this Q&A will be very awkward if nobody shows up. uh, would you like to post an announcement that this is the link, by the way, that it's up?
Sure.
Otherwise, it would just literally be me asking you questions. There we go. More people are coming now.
It
Imagine that. It was just like me
helps
asking
when you
you.
tag like 1,000 people.
Yes, yes. I mean, to be fair, like the people that I can inform on the forums and on Discord are all people who look at that man chat. You tag somebody and suddenly we have 18 people. Stop being so popular.
What is this you are streaming?
Sorry?
The actual video.
Oh, I had to put something in the background, and I didn't really want to put the menu screen there, so I just got a ship and stuck some asteroids in front of it. Otherwise, everybody would be looking at like the menu screen for an hour.
What? It's a great menu screen. I may be biased.
Mm, I actually want to do something with like ships flying around, but it's really difficult to do that in Cosmoteer because you know, you have to like put the ships outside your screen and then they don't travel at the same speeds.
Yeah. Actually, I have a like special demo mode that it's like a different version of the game that I use when I go to like events and demo the game where it will just like play itself, like it'll play Bounty Hunter, and then occasionally reset itself.
Yes, I saw that when you were doing that podcast thing. But what I was doing, like, I was going to do something like a traffic with space. What is it? God damn it! English is hard. Let me just remembered I should probably turn off the UI. There we go. Yeah, I was do something like a space highway with ships flying around and space stations, etc., etc. Yeah, 5 minutes into a live stream starts. We have 50 people now.
Nice.
Just to confirm, we are taking questions like oops. Oopsie daisies. We are taking questions like, have you considered X feature in the game, right?
Yeah.
Just a heads up to everybody watching. Wait, you are only taking questions about Cosmoteer, right? You're not taking questions about yourself. Or rather...
They should be like relatively... All right, so I don't want to answer like meme questions or like what is my favorite pizza or stuff like that, right? But if it's like about Cosmoteer or game development or video games or something like that, I think those are all on topic. The closer to Cosmoteer, the better.
So I guess after this, I'd be at 9.96, right?
I believe that is technically correct, although don't ask me to prove the math on that. I'm not exactly sure how it works out.
I think we should start the live stream now.
Okay.
If people would like to start asking questions in chat.
The Q&A begins, I guess.
Okay, first question. Would you consider hosting one of the Cosmoteer tournaments?
Well, I've co-hosted with you, what, a couple times, right?
Yes, you have.
Um,
But would you...
yeah, so sorry.
But the question also asks, would you host it to give your technical opinions?
What is a technical opinion?
So, like, I'm assuming that means balance, opinions on balance and weapons.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I Yeah, I mean, like I have opinions about balance. Although like honestly, by no means am I the best player at Cosmoteer. Like I think probably everyone in this tournament today is gonna be a better player than I am. And so honestly, like probably they have a better idea of balance than I do. And so like I just generally when I work on balance updates, I just take a lot of feedback from the community and try to, the things that people complain about that make sense to me, I try to fix. Um, I don't know if that answers the question.
Okay, let's move on to a more how should I say it? More interesting question. Will there be factions in the game, and how will you implement them?
Probably. In fact, I think very likely. Um, I imagine there will be so like you'll have to start a new game and the map will maybe depending on the size of the map it might have like a half dozen factions or maybe more than that or something like that, right? And maybe they like own different areas of the galaxy and then like you can go on missions for these factions and that could like influence what influence their like territory, right? So like if you go on a mission for a faction, then that mission could cause like a faction to like pick up another planet or something like that. Um, so like you can go on missions to like influence factions, and maybe if you like if you do enough missions for a faction, then maybe you can actually kind of like start to take like leadership of that faction somehow. Maybe I'm not promising anything here, but just kind of like that's kind of what I'm thinking about. Then probably like each faction would kind of have like a different style of ships, right? So like maybe one faction would have like kind of like big boxy ships with lots of cannons, and maybe another ship would be like another faction would have like very sleek ships, lots of energy weapons, things like that.
So, would you be able to? Would these factions be able to interact with each other without player support? So, would factions go to war each other in the galaxy without you actually being there?
Yes. I mean, I think part of it would be that some of them will be at war with each other, and then you can kind of like influence that war, by like going on missions for one faction against another faction or something like that. And then if you go to like disputed sectors, you might like FTL into the middle of a battle or something like that, right? Um, the game is certainly like not going to simultaneously simulate 100 ship battles at all the time, right? Like in places in other sectors where you are not. Um, but I can see like maybe like if there's some kind of like time that kind of passes in the game. So like maybe FTL is not like instant. Maybe like FTL takes a certain amount of like in-game time. Like maybe it takes like a day to jump from one system or to another, or like a week or something like that, right? In-game time, and then like the time advances, and maybe like a faction could like during that time take territory from another faction, things like that.
Right. Okay. So, a question that I'm sure a lot of people are asking right now is that when will Cosmoteer be released, and will certain groups of people get keys for the game?
The answer to the first question is I don't know yet. Um, it would be pretty great if it happened sometime this year. Or excuse me, not this year, in 2019. It's still
Okay.
2018.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, it was maybe another couple weeks. No, sometime in 2019 would be great, but I don't know that for sure. Um, in terms of who gets keys, that's not something want to do a lot of promising about. There are certainly people who have kind of like um, contributed a lot to like the Cosmoteer community and the game itself, who will be getting free keys from me. Um, I will unfortunately probably not be able to give like free keys to just everyone who like plays the game and gives feedback, right? Because I don't really have a good way to do that. And also like honestly, like if I want to actually make some semblance of a living off of this game, which yes is my goal, I might be shooting myself in the foot if I do that, right?
Yes, giving away for
To be perfectly honest, I do actually have to put bread on the table, so to speak.
and not give the game away for free to everybody.
Yeah. But there have certainly been a fair number of people who have kind of gone above and beyond the Call of Duty, and have like really meaningfully made the game better and made the community better. And those people will be getting keys.
uh, Eris Black Wolf J asks, what are some ideas you have for new weapons?
Well, I mean, you can certainly, like the most concrete ideas, you can certainly just kind of check out on the Trello, right? So like things that are coming up. Um, well, if like people haven't checked out like the missile prototypes, so a bunch of new missile types, right? So like we're getting the nuclear missiles and EMP missiles and mines, which are going to be actually fired from the missile launcher. And other in future updates. Hold on, let me check the Trello. I wrote these down so I don't have to remember them. Coming soon. Not really a weapon, but like the tractor beam, which you could certainly like use offensively to like control and manipulate enemy ships. Ion beam prisms to like combine ion beams together into like a single massive beam. I guess that's all the immediate weapons I have planned coming up. Other things I have, so like I'm still thinking about having like a super huge cannon that goes like on top of your ship, so that you don't have to like place it on the edge, like a really powerful cannon. That's super powerful. And you can place it inside your ship, but it's like so powerful that it'll kind of like damage the area around it on your own ship whenever it shoots. So something like that sometime in the future might be cool. Although I think with that particular cannon, the game will need kind of some sort of repair mechanic, like in battle repair mechanic, to make that a viable weapon. Some sort of like melee weapons, like a buzzsaw or something, so you can get in like really close to enemy ships and like grind them into pieces, something like that. We've talked before about like some sort of like Gatling style weapon, which may or may not be the same thing as like an anti-armor shredding or dissolving weapon of some sort. So just like right now we have like the electro bolters, which are anti-shield weapons, like some sort of like anti-armor weapon that does bonus damage against armor. Something some sort of weapon that's kind of like so what I'm currently thinking is like basically kind of like a sniper beam laser, where you can either like just like, if you have multiple of these like sniper beam lasers, you could either just fire them individually, or you can kind of like combine them together Death Star style into like a single super laser, which could maybe like penetrate inside of enemy ships and snipe their reactors and things like that. So that's a bunch of ideas that I have.
And possibly more weapons down the line?
In addition to those?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the sky's the limit. Obviously, like every weapon takes time to develop and implement into the game, right? And I think, I mean, I want all of the weapons to be like high quality, interesting weapons. I'm not super into making weapons that are just like slightly different variant of another weapon. So like I do tend to favor quality over quantity, but quantity is still good too, as long as there's quality. So I don't think having a lot of weapons is necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, one weapon at a time though. We'll get there. Keep building them up.
Well, something else that you have said before is that there won't be a plot in Cosmoteer, right?
Probably not. I don't wanna promise yes or no about that. My sense is that maybe there is like a backstory or a lore to kind of like the galaxy the way it is. Maybe there are like small plots that you can kind of like uncover or experience as you play through the game. But, like mostly it's kind of like player driven. Maybe there's kind of like an some ultimate objective that you're trying to accomplish or something like that. But I think for the most part there will not be like this grand story where you play through a bunch of story missions. I think that it's probably going to be a more kind of freeform player directed experience. But maybe you still are like uncovering lore as you go through it.
Polar Bear asks, has anybody who went to your college class known about Cosmoteer beforehand?
Oh, before they were my students, I not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, okay. So, you're not that popular yet. Alright, next question. Is there any estimate on when WASD controls will be implemented into the game?
So the big question about WASD controls, um, is that is can you all do you also have direct control over your weapons, like where your weapons aim and where they shoot, or and when they shoot, and so if the answer to that is I decide is no, the weapons still just kind of like behave how they do right now, where they fire automatically or you can target them. Then in that case, WASD controls are actually like quite easy to implement. Either I just need some like mode that you can toggle on, or maybe I just make it so that as soon as you start pressing WAS or D, or I guess Q and E, you would need to, because you want to like rotate and strafe. Um, Maybe that would just instantly switch to like your direct flight mode. But if and that would be fairly easy to implement. But if you also want to be able to kind of like manually aim and fire your weapons, um, then that kind of now it needs to be this kind of like whole separate mode UI kind of thing, because you would want to do that with the mouse probably, right? Like use your cursor to aim and click to shoot, right? Which means that all the rest of the like regular RTS style UI needs to get deactivated, stuff like that. And so that if it worked like that, it would be considerably more complicated. It would probably need to be like just a whole separate mode that you actually like have a button to toggle into. And so the reason I haven't even done the kind of like simple WASD only, um, uh, is that, oh, if I do the simple WASD only and then I decide that I also want like mouse targeting and firing of weapons, then I'll probably have to rewrite a bunch of like the WASD code, and that will have been like wasted work. So I haven't. That's why basically haven't done WASD yet. But if I decide it's you're not going to be able to aim and fire your weapons with the mouse, then it's actually like probably a pretty easy addition to the game, um, and I could probably do it very quickly.
Is it high priority for you to add, or is it just something that would be nice to have?
I wouldn't really call it a high priority, but it's also fairly easy to implement. Aside from the manual weapon aiming and firing, um, and so it might be the kind of thing where I could actually just like it would only take me a few hours to do it, and in that case, I might as well just do it. Even though it's not a super high priority, it'd still be like a nice to have that is relatively cheap to add.
Okay, next question. Uh, are you planning to hire a full-time professional artist for the sprites, and are you planning to redo any of the existing sprites?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in terms of like hiring an artist or like team members in general, basically I would need money to do that, and that money needs to come from somewhere. And so like right now I have enough money to basically pay pay for myself, but I don't really have enough money to hire other people to work on the game. And so if I wanted to do that, which like I am seriously thinking about, like I'll need to get that money from somewhere, right? And so that means probably either like a publisher, or something like Kickstarter or something like that. So I'm thinking about hiring an artist and maybe some sort of like designer as well. But that is nowhere near set in stone yet. In terms of like, am I planning to replace any of the existing sprites? I do think some of the existing sprites are kind of like a little like I think I've gotten better as I've made this game at making art. Um, and so some of the sprites I feel like are kind of like not as good as the others. Um, the ones I don't like the cruise quarters and the cruise bunks, they're just like a bunch of beds that are a little weird. I feel like maybe there should be like more things in those rooms. Um, so those are kind of like on the table to get changed at some point. I'm actually not a huge big fan of the reactor, especially like the interior view of the reactor. I suspect I will redo that when I add the larger reactor sizes. Um, so that's on the table. And then if I do hire an artist, it's I think it's probably likely that the artist might just like change everything, right? Like
Mm.
they would probably come with their own art style, um, which will, assuming assuming this artist is better than I am, which is kind of like half the point of me hiring an artist is because I'm not really a professional artist. Um, assuming their art is better than mine, like I would kind of want them to redo everything, probably. Um, Either that or they'd have to like emulate my style, which could be hard in of itself, right? Because everyone has their own style. Um,
Yes, you have said before that art was the hardest part of making the game, right? Is that so true?
I don't know if hard is exactly the right word. It is certainly I think what I'm kind of like the least good at and the least quick at. So like whenever I make art, like usually like if I add a new weapon to the game, um it'll take me way more time to make the art for it than it will take me to write the code for it. Because I'm a much better programmer than I am an artist. Um, and so yeah. Um,
So it will
I
be
don't
more
know.
like most time consuming.
Yeah, it's certainly the most time consuming part of adding new weapons and new other shipbuilding parts to the game. Yes. It's not like I certainly don't spend like half my time working on art, right? Because there are plenty of other things to work on, like new features that don't require art, right? But in terms of adding new actually shipbuilding parts, yeah, probably at least half the time is spent on making the art for them.
Uh, are you planning to update the painting mode of ships, which includes adding a new decal layer?
I am probably going to add a new decal layer at some point in time. Um, no promises, but that's something I'm kind of assuming I'm going to do. Assuming it's like technically relatively straightforward to do. There's some having like an unlimited number of layers comes with some like negative performance implications. Um, just because like all of those layers need to get rendered. They like each needs to get rendered individually. Um, However, like I think I can pretty safely go up to three, or maybe even four, without too much negative consequence. So I'm gonna look into it. It just like hasn't been an especially high priority.
Next question: how do you plan to implement boarding, and how will it affect the game?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Boarding's a ways off, right? And so I don't have any like concrete plans about how exactly that's going to work. So I mean, I guess the first thing is you obviously need to get your crew onto the enemy ship somehow, right? And so either maybe you can have like transporter, teleporter that can beam your crew onto the enemy ship. Um, Maybe you'll have to maybe you can build like teleporter inhibitors or something like that to defend against that, or maybe you can't like teleport through shields or something like that. Um, so that's one way you could get crew onto the enemy ship. Another way is like you could have like boarding pods or something like that, right? Like I'm imagining like loading a whole bunch of like shock troopers into this little like boarding pod and shooting the boarding pod at the enemy ship, and it like attaches to the side and drills like an opening into it, and then your guys get on that way. So that's like another way you can get your troops onto the enemy ship. Once they're there, kind of like, do you have like direct control over your little shock trooper guys?
Or
I think that would be nice. To be able to like tell them, oh, go take this room, go take this room. And so maybe there's like a special like mode you can switch into that lets you like select your guys RTS style and order them around, tell them to go places and things like that. So that's kind of what I have in mind, but it's that's a pretty far off feature. We'll probably get like fighters and carriers before we'll get boarding.
speaking of fighters and carriers, how is that the next update plan after the missiles? Like the major
Uh,
update?
no, probably not. Do you mean after the missiles or after the whole uh what is it, 014 we're on?
Yes, so after 014.
Uh, Probably not, honestly. I'm probably going to, so after the 014, I'm probably going to um either do kind of like a crew revamp. So I want to give the player more control over their crew, not necessarily direct control where you like tell a guy and tell them where to go, right? Because that would be insane doing that for a ship with like 100 or 1,000 crew during battle, right? But to kind of like give you more control over like crew priorities, like prioritizing different systems or like assigning certain crew to only do jobs for like a certain weapon or something like that, which will hopefully kind of like make compartmentalizing your ship less desirable. Um, so giving more control over crew, allowing you to kind of like put crew into different roles. So you'd have like red shirts and blue shirts and things like that that have like they'll do different tasks and things like that. Um, Giving like making crew at least like at least like making them all kind of like look different, right? um right now they're just like all the same clones of like one little dude running around, right? So making making them each their kind of like own little character could be fun. um some way to make crew like actually kind of uh like uh like get more experienced or level up or something like that would, I think, be nice. Um, Mainly for the single player, although exactly how that's gonna work, I'm really not sure yet.
Speaking of crew, have you ever considered more like crew quarter features, such as a cafeteria or a bar, or basically something for the crew to relax and have that be a requirement on a ship?
Yeah, I've thought about that, and I think I'd like to do something along those lines. Exactly how that works, I'm not sure. So, like a couple things I've thought about are so maybe your crew have like some happiness level or something like that. And having things like gymnasiums and holodecks and like cafeterias and bathrooms and things like that, right? will make your crew happier. What exactly happens when your crew is unhappy? I'm not entirely sure. Like, does your crew mutiny or something like that? And like, what's better about having a super happy crew as opposed to just like an average happy crew? I'm not sure. So there are a bunch of things that needs to get worked out there. Um, maybe like you would need to give your crew like shore leave occasionally. Like maybe that influences like how often you have to return to a space station to let them like have a break. And maybe if you have like holodecks and stuff like that, you don't have to like return to a space station as often or something like that. I'm not sure. So maybe something like that. The other thing I've thought about is having like um, either like fancier cruise quarters or like other different amenities that are like prerequisites for being able to hire more experienced crew. So if you like want like experienced officers or gunners or something like that, maybe you have to like provide them with better accommodations or something like that. That I'm really unsure about. Just kind of like an idea that I'm thinking about. So I don't know whether either of those things will happen or will happen exactly how I describe them, but it's something that I'm thinking about.
Uh, Back to the subject of crew again. Because right now crew are pretty lifeless, as such as they're basically robots, really. um, are there going to be more different types of crew? For example, engineers, medics.
I mean, I'd certainly like to do that. It's just kind of like the question is, what does being an engineer actually mean, right? Like, what bonus does that give you? Does that mean like if you build an engine room, does that mean the engine room can only be staffed by engineers? Maybe, or do like engineers somehow give you like a bonus to your ship's thrusters or something like that? I'm not sure. So the answer is like yes, I definitely want specialized crew like that. I'm just not exactly sure in some cases exactly how that would work, right? Like if you have a like a specialized gunner who's really good at shooting things, what does that actually mean in terms of like the actual gameplay, right? Because it doesn't really make sense that a gunner would make your bullets do more damage. I guess maybe it would make your cannons aim better, but that kind of like relies on me being able to improve the aiming algorithm, which is which is like a non-trivial improvement, right? It's not exactly clear to me in some cases what the specialized crew would actually give you, unless it's like just some weapons just require specialized crew.
Here's a good question. What is the core gameplay loop going to be? Because right now it's basically kill ship, get money, and upgrade ship and kill more ship.
Right. What I'd like to add to that, a couple things. One are kind of like space stations where you can go visit and you can do various things at. One being space stations will probably be kind of like the place where you can go to upgrade your ship, at least if your ship does not have its like own ship construction facilities, right? So like maybe eventually you can build a ship that has its own like shipbuilding bay or drones or something like that that can build ships. But until then, maybe you have to like return to a space station to be able to like build and repair your ship. Um, some sort of shore leave I was just talking about with the crew. So maybe that's part of a reason why you'd return to a space station. Space stations could be like uh, where you go to like trade supplies, things like that. So I guess like that touches on like the other kind of like big thing I want to add to single player, which is like basically like both mining asteroids and also kind of like scavenging from the wrecks of enemy ships that you've destroyed, things like that. So you can like scavenge resources and then like go to space stations and trade resources. And so maybe you can also like fly between space stations and trade resources. Um, uh, Does that sort of answer the question?
I hope so, because it's answered my question, at least, because right now the gameplay loop is pretty boring after a while, right?
Yeah, the gameplay loop right now is, I think, actually too loopy. It's like too much of a loop, right? It's just you do
Yeah.
one thing and then loop back to the other thing and then loop to the one thing, right? So like giving more options for you to do, um, making the loop bigger and have more variation in like each loop, right? But basically, go to space station, go out, do something, either go on a mission, destroy a bounty, mine some asteroids, something like that, and then like return to space station, get your reward, turn in supplies, things like that. Repeat.
Next question, and I already know the answer to this, but for the rest of the viewers, what are your thoughts about a ranking systems? How would you implement it, and how would it change multiplayer?
Yeah, so I used to be a lot more negative on ranking systems than I am right now, mainly because I kind of didn't feel like competitive multiplayer would work well enough, but it's actually worked in practice significantly better than I thought it would. Um, like hence why we're having these tournaments and things like that, right? Is because these tournaments are actually interesting and competitive. Um, so yeah, I think ideally, once the game has enough players to warrant a ranking system, I would have a ranking system. Um, uh, Now ranking does not necessarily mean like matchmaking. I think like I would be like the game would have to be like wildly successful, I think, to have enough players constantly in multiplayer for like an automatic matchmaking system to work. But you could still have like some sort of ranking system without matchmaking, right? So like maybe you can like host a ranked match that uses like one of the built-in rule sets, and then that affects your like elo score or something like that, right? Um, so yeah, it would be nice, but I don't have any like I don't have any details about how exactly that's going to work or when it'll happen.
Okay. Next question. Again, I already know this. Hold on a second while I just look for it. Darn it! I've lost track. Give me one more second. Oh yes. Do you have some? Are you planning to design more ships yourself, or are you planning to all have more design contests to add ships into the game?
Both.
Both.
I definitely want to have more design contests. Although we still need to have an update since the last design contest. So I need to put those ships in the game first before we do another design contest specifically for adding new player ships into the game. Yeah, like I want to make some ships too. I'm especially looking forward to when there are factions that have like different styles of ships, and like making ships specifically for those factions is something I look forward to doing.
Again, a question that I'm pretty sure a lot of people already know the answer to. Is an MMO game mode possible?
No.
Okay. Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, Cosmoteer is just like, I mean, you have like ships with like thousands of crew on them running around, right? Like it is like people's computers already struggle enough just like running a battle with a half dozen medium-sized ships in it, right? Like imagine a game with 1,000 ships and or like 1,000 players, and it's just like yeah, that is just it's just way too complex. So that's not gonna happen. I'm sorry.
Uh, Another question: Are is it possible for players to mod in their own factions or start their
Uh,
own factions in game? Even
you mean like once factions are a thing?
yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It will be possible to mod factions in. As for starting with a faction, I don't know. I haven't really thought enough about exactly how you'll start in the game. Whether you will start allied with a faction or start kind of neutral and then have to like build reputation with a faction. Um, I'm not sure. Maybe you can choose which way to start.
I think the
I'm not sure.
question was more about like, can you start your own faction while after like you're playing a
Oh, I
while?
see. I think that would be nice. I'm just not immediately sure exactly how that would work.
So again, it's on the table, but no promises.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, have you considered revamping the ship command? Because right now it's just one control room. Have you considered making it like possibly other larger control rooms with bigger bonuses to the ship?
Yeah, that's something I've been thinking about actively, although I haven't kind of. So the big question is, why, as a player, would you want to have a larger control room? Um, and I haven't really come up with an answer to that, which I really love yet. Um, I mean, it could be something as simple as smaller control rooms, either like limit the size of your ship or like the number of crew you can have on a ship. I'm not like a super fan of either of those ideas, just because that's kind of like an arbitrarily enforced restriction on your ship, and I generally like to avoid those kinds of like really arbitrary feeling restrictions. Um, so I mean, another other reasons that you might want to build larger control rooms could be like maybe there's something a little more sophisticated where you have like maybe like a command point system where like maybe each system uses a certain number of command points and control rooms provide command points. Um, that feels a little less arbitrary, but it's also like more complicated. It might be kind of like a hassle to keep track of. I don't know. So I definitely want to have larger control rooms. I think that's kind of like, I think that's important from like a fantasy and lore perspective. Um, I just haven't figured out exactly why that actually matters in terms of gameplay yet.
Uh, sort of running out of questions here, but another interesting question is that will you be allowing texture packs into the game? So changing the textures of the sprites.
I mean, you can certainly do that right now with mods. It's a little inconvenient because you have to write your mod files to like individually swap out all of the texture files, um, like all of the PNG files. So it's a little inconvenient, but you can certainly do it right now.
But I mean, like with in-game support. So
You mean like without restarting the game?
with restarting game, but since right now you'd have to like manually go change the textures yourself, right, in the data folder.
I mean, I guess what's the alternative?
So
I
like
mean, like,
something like Minecraft where everything gets replaced after you enable a texture pack.
I mean, you could right now you could make a mod that does that, right? Is I guess what I'm saying. Like you could make a mod
Oh
that swaps
yes,
out all of the textures.
yes, that was a bad
Um,
question. Forget. I misremembered how you could replace stuff with mods. uh, going to some of the other questions. Give me a second. Yes, this is one of the things that you thought might be asked. What do you think about the Epic Game Store? Are you planning to launch Cosmoteer on it?
um, so I have kind of like mixed feelings about the Epic Game Store, depending on whether you're asking me like as a developer or as a player. Um, as
Uh,
a developer, the like the what is it, like the 88% that like I would get as a developer is certainly a lot more attractive than like the 70% I would get on Steam. Like that could certainly like that could make the difference between like Cosmoteer being a financial success and a financial failure, right? So as a developer, that kind of like that split is very attractive. As a player, I'm kind of like not as enthusiastic because it's kind of like just another store that I have games on that now I have to manage and stuff like that, right? Which is kind of inconvenient. And then also the kind of like like it looks like a bunch of games are kind of like exclusive to the Epic Store for at least a while, right? Which is kind of like I understand why a developer would want to do that. Because like if Epic's promising you a certain amount of money, that makes that makes your game a lot less risky financially. But like as a player, it's kind of like inconvenient. I'd rather like be able to buy a game on the platform that is most convenient for me, right? Um, as for whether like Cosmoteer ever launches on the Epic Store, I mean, I think I'd like to if that's possible at some point. I mean, ideally, I think Cosmoteer will be on as many stores as possible so that like you can just pick whatever store you like the best and buy it there.
Uh, would you rather like would you prefer Epic's revenue share, or do you think that's enough to make up for the lack of user base?
Oh, like if I had to pick one or the other?
Yes.
Oh, like if I had to pick one or the other, I would pick Steam for sure.
Oh, okay, okay,
Um,
okay.
Yeah, like I mean probably. I mean a lot of people play Fortnite. I get like we don't really have good data on how many people, I think. I haven't seen data on how many people are actually on the Epic Store, right? Like it's new enough that I don't really know, right? But I'm still sure that there are probably many times as many people on Steam as are on the Epic Store, right? So at this point, I think I would almost certainly pick Steam if I had to choose between one or the other.
Here's a slightly personal question from me. Why was there such a pause in development for Starlight back in the day?
Because I had a real job, quote unquote real job. Yeah,
So,
because I mean it was like this was a side project of mine. It started way back when I was in school. Um, like I basically started it because I needed like to make a game for basically kind of like an independent study class. Um, so I kind of like that's when I made like the original Unity prototype, which you can actually still go play. It's on the website. Um, but then I kind of like had like real jobs for like 3 or 4 years after that. And so it was mostly just like a prototype that I occasionally worked on in the evenings and on weekends and things like that. But it's like when you're already working like 40 plus hours a week on
you don't want to keep.
on games professionally, like my motivation to then come home and work on more games is usually not high enough to actually work on it, right? So work on it was like very slow while it was called Star Rate. And it picked up after I left my last job.
I guess that leads us to the next question, which is, do you really enjoy working on Cosmoteer, or is it just a pain?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, it's not like I enjoy like literally every, right? There's certainly there's sometimes when I just have like a bunch of programming on something that I need to do and the programming is not very interesting and like is that particular moment enjoyable? No, not really. Sometimes like right now I'm definitely feeling kind of like I'm adding a bunch of new missiles and stuff to the game, right? And having to make art for all of those, right? It's just like, and like while I do mostly enjoy making the art, I kind of wish I didn't have like so much of it that I needed to do like right now. I wish I had more variety of things to work on. But like for the most part, yeah, like I enjoy working on it. Like if I didn't, then I don't think I would still be working on it.
I'm sure you'd have like a lot less work to do if you all those people in Discord didn't have all their own opinions about your artwork.
uh, no, the opinions are good.
Will there be an in-game system of ship classes, such as carriers, destroyers, fighters, etc.?
Ooh, so fighters probably. I suspect fighters will be their own like separate kind of ship that has their own like separate parts that you use to build fighters. So I think for fighters, yes, because those would be kind of like fighters are like a special thing that you will store inside your regular ships, um, and then you can launch them out. Um, So for fighters, I think yes. In terms of like classifying kind of like regular ships as like carriers or destroyers or corvettes or whatever, I think probably not. I'm not sure because I don't want to kind of like limit what the player can build. Like if the player is building a, I don't I, like I want the player to be able to decide kind of like what their ship is. If they want to make like a hybrid between a carrier and a battleship, or like a tiny little corvette that has a couple fighter bays or something like that, right? Like I don't want to like arbitrarily restrict that. Um, so probably no classification for like normal ships.
Uh, will you be implementing more celestial bodies, such as asteroids, or black holes, or wormholes?
I'd like to for sure. Yeah.
You'd like to, but again, it's on the table. Not sure when.
Everything I say that's not in the game yet is
Yeah,
can be
yeah.
changed.
Yes.
I could get hit by a bus this afternoon, right? No plans to do that, but
Let's
I'm not
try
trying, but
not
you
to
never know,
get.
right?
Let's try not to get hit by a
I'll
bus.
try real hard not to. I promise that.
Uh, what about multiple types of FTL? So right now we have warp, I assume.
Yeah, I guess I'm not. I mean, so right now I do kind of I don't know. It's the very like it's like the FTL that is actually like directly inspired by like FTL the game.
Oh,
I guess it's kind of like the Battlestar Galactica kind of FTL. Um, as opposed to like Star Trek Warp or like Star Wars Hyperspace or like opening a wormhole or something like that, right? Um, I mean, I guess my question would be, how are like those kinds of those different kinds of like of faster than light travel like actually substantively different from each other in terms of like gameplay? Like what does one do that the other doesn't do, right? Like why would you as a player use one kind of FTL over another kind of FTL? And that I'm not sure about. It's not really something I've thought about.
another important question: how much do you think Cosmoteer will cost once it comes out?
Again, I'm not entirely sure. My best guess is probably somewhere between $15 and $20.
So similar to a lot of other indie games.
Basically normal indie game pricing.
Okay. Back to the other questions list. How do you keep track of bugs and tasks apart from Trello?
Yeah, so I use the incredibly sophisticated method known as a Google document, where I have a bullet point list of things that I write down when I don't want to forget them. It is very unorganized. I basically just have it's just a Google Doc that has a bunch of notes in it that I write down. And if it's something that I think I probably want to get done for the next update, I put it in bold. And that's about it.
So no, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if
Okay.
someone posts like a bug on the forum or something, I'll usually just like copy and paste the link to the forum post into my Google Doc so that I remember to go revisit the forum post and remind myself what the bug is, right? I guess the other thing I have that's worth mentioning is like if the game crashes, or if also like if you get a desync in multiplayer, um, unless you've turned error reporting off in the settings, like I will get that crash in my in like a special Gmail account I have. So basically, it'll get turned into an email that gets sent to this special Gmail account that stores Cosmoteer crashes, and it'll have basically like the log file of the crash. And if it's a multiplayer game, like a replay file, so that I can load it up and look at the replay of the multiplayer game. So that's the other thing I use for handling bugs, but that only works for like automatically reported bugs reported by the game itself, and not bugs that actual people have reported.
Uh, Another question that I'm sure a lot of people already know, but just for the record, will people be able to play Cosmoteer for like will people be able to keep their last version of Cosmoteer once you release it on Steam?
Yes.
Yes. but it will be the last free version, and the paid version will have new features, right?
Yes, very likely.
Oh, okay, okay. Will shield with a bigger radius be added?
Probably. I would like to have them just kind of like from a like lore fantasy standpoint, like why can't there be larger shields, right? Um, I do think they're kind of like that does kind of like raise balance questions, right? Like so much of the game's meta right now is kind of like dependent on the current size of the current shields, right? And like if I add a larger shield to the game, what does that do to the meta of the game, and is that good or bad? I don't know, right? So that's something I'll have to like carefully think about and test with all the players and stuff like that. But basically, I'd like to have bigger shields.
Go back to the other questions list. How does it feel working on a game by yourself for 3 years? Or is it 4 years by now? Yeah, it's 4 years, right?
It's about 3 years. Well, it's about 3 years that I've been working on it since I left my job.
Oh.
Minus time spent doing other things like teaching. How does it feel? It feels mixed feelings about it. On the bright side, it's certainly like it feels very empowering to be able to like make this whole game myself, right? Especially because when I started this, I like knew basically nothing about making art and about like making sound effects, and things like that, right? And so kind of like having taught myself how to make sprites and animation and things like that to like the limited extent that I have that I can, that feels really empowering. Like that feels really good. The downside is I do like legitimately miss working with people. And I like working by myself can like honestly be a little lonely at times. And it would be I'd like to work with people. I think that would be more enjoyable. So there are pros and cons.
Okay, a bit of a more personal question from me. What do you think about the monthly tournaments?
I like them a lot. I wish that I was faster about getting updates out in between them, especially these last few months, because this has just been a huge update, and I've been at least spending like at least half my time teaching. Um, so I wish that I could get more updates out between them, so that they changed up more between each tournament, or at least like each couple tournaments. But generally, like I try to watch them when I can, which is usually. I generally think they're pretty fun. Like I like watching people play my game is fun. Like that makes me feel good about myself. So I like the tournaments.
How do you avoid burning out when programming? Well, making the game.
It's hard. um, Actually, I guess my personal problem isn't so much burnout in terms of like overworking myself. It's kind of like my personal problem is more like self-motivation, like getting myself to work enough. um, for me personally, like I found it really helpful to um, like share things with the community, and like when people like give me feedback on things, like honestly, like you all in the community are just like the reason I am still working on this, right? Like I think if I didn't have the kind of like frequent mostly positive feedback from the community, um or at least like critical feedback, critical because people like the game and they want it to be better, right? They have opinions about it. Like I think like that feedback is certainly like very motivating, and I think that if I was working on this game and it was not like a live game that people could play and give me their feedback on, then I think I probably wouldn't be making it anymore, because I don't think I would have the motivation to do it. Does that sort of answer your question?
Yes, it does very much. Just a heads up. We need to like start wrapping this up because it's been almost an hour. Just a few more questions. Will there be stuff like radar jammers and update the radar to counter those?
Yeah, I'd like to do something like that. That might get like integrated into like some sort of stealth system. So like maybe you can stealth your ship, but then get like detected with a radar, but maybe then you can have like a radar jammer to like counter the other person's radar or something like that. So yeah, not something I've thought about a ton, but I think that's something that makes sense.
Will there be HP bars for ships like in multiplayer, but in Bounty Hunter?
Oh, I guess I don't really see why. Like the bars are there in multiplayer is the bars exist in multiplayer because like that's the actual objective of multiplayer is to reduce the health of the enemy ship to some like 10% or something like that, right? Like that's the actual goal of multiplayer. So I think the health bar is useful there. In single player, there's not really that goal. Like in Bounty Hunter right now, the goal is just destroy all the enemy's reactors, right? And so I don't think like the health bar is as meaningful there. So I think the answer is probably no. I don't see why I would add big health bars to single player.
Will crew absolutely be needed? Will you add things like pipes, conveyors, wires, or drones, or even just non-crew stuff to move stuff around?
I think basically the answer to that is no. Except that I think it's conceivable that maybe in the very distant future I might add like totally different like weird alien ships, right? So like maybe instead of having like crew, you have like these just giant living organism ships that have like blood vessels that carry energy around or something like that, right? So I think in the near future for the kind of like human style ships, I think the answer to that is no. Crew will, for the most part, do most everything. I haven't ruled out adding like conveyor belts or something like that, but I don't. The risk of that is that adding conveyor belts makes crew less important, and crew I feel very strongly are what right now makes ship design interesting. And so if I make crew less important, then ship design gets less interesting, and that's bad for the game. So if I add conveyor belts, it would need to be in a way that either doesn't make crew less interesting or at least adds enough interest to shipbuilding to make up for making crew less interesting, if that makes sense.
Last question. Do you want to increase, like, how many more modular weapons do you want to add into the game? Because right now it's just the railgun.
Ooh, modular weapons. Well, I don't know if you count if you will count the ion prisms that I'm planning to add. I think I would. Those like ion beams plus prisms that allow you to combine ion beams together and redirect them and things like that. I think that probably counts as a modular weapon. So at least that. I guess I don't have any concrete plans to add any other weapons. But I'm certainly like very open to it. Like if I come up with an idea or someone else comes up with an idea for like a cool modular weapon, I think modular weapons are cool. I'd love to have more of them.
Well, maybe if you add some ion prisms, these ion beams can finally destroy those asteroids. Buff ions, please. Anyway,
they will.
That was the last question. Thank you to everybody watching for participating in this Q&A.
Cool. Thanks for the questions, everyone.
Unless you have anything that specifically you want to answer in the text chat?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. That means I will take a quick break and start on the Grand Championships. Be right back, but I'm going to stop the stream for now as I edit the game files.
Alrighty.
Thank you to everybody watching. Goodbye for now.